Track saw versus a table saw. While both are excellent tools that can accomplish a lot of the same tasks, that doesn't mean that one is perfect for every application. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I like to use one over the other and explain my thought process behind that. And the first thing we'll talk about is a track saw. Now, a track saw is obviously a very big benefit simply because instead of me bringing the material to the tool, I'm bringing the tool to the material. Now, where does that come in handy? So let's say that you're breaking down a lot of sheets of 4x8 plywood. Now, it doesn't take a genius to realize that putting that on a surface and then making the cut is probably a lot easier than trying to manipulate one of those large sheets on a table saw. Regardless of the size of the table saw, it's going to be a lot more easy to manage by placing it on a flat surface and bringing the tool to the piece of material. Now, speaking of bringing the tool to the material, one of the big benefits to a track saw is that if I needed to do something like a vertical cut on a wall or trimming a door, maybe undercutting a door, I can actually do that in place because I'm able to bring the track and the track saw to the material. That is something I definitely cannot do with a table saw. So in this instance, a track saw is going to be a great tool for that application because I can take that larger piece of material, utilize my track saw to break it down into more manageable pieces. From there, I can then take the smaller, more manageable, lighter pieces to say something like a table saw. Now, while this is a great tool for sheet goods specifically, it may not be the best option if I needed to rip a long piece of hardwood. Now, why is that? Well, it's for a couple of reasons. Typically, hardwood is going to be much more narrow, so we don't have as much for the track to be supported on, even though there are ways around that. A better application would be using a table saw and referencing a fence to get the proper width cuts that you want. The other benefit to that is that typically a table saw is going to have more power, therefore it's going to do a better job of cutting through the material in one pass. To go one step further on the more narrow stock, whether it's cross-cutting or ripping, having a fence and a more stable platform in order to reference off of is going to make more sense. And that's especially important even with cross-cutting. Now, while you can use a track saw and set it up on a table like this and get really accurate, repeatable cross-cuts, sometimes a table saw may be better for those smaller pieces. Now, the next big difference is that a table saw is going to give you a lot more versatility when it comes to things like jigs or even the ability to maybe make larger size cuts. Most table saws have the ability to have these additional features as where a track saw does not. Now let's talk a little bit about portability. So a track saw is able to be taken pretty much anywhere, or in this case, even this table saw. But you don't have that ability with all of the tools. So let's say that you have a vehicle that can't support large pieces of material and you need to actually break those things down prior to you loading them into your vehicle to take to your shop for your project. Well, that's where a track saw would come in very handy because I can simply take this, throw it in the car, and I can make cuts on site. The same thing applies if you have a cordless platform for a table saw, you can do the same thing. The next thing I want to highlight is a little bit about safety. So traditionally, a track saw is going to be a safer option for most people. Why? Because with a table saw, we have the constant fear of a potential kickback or many other things that can happen on a table saw. While a track saw is not foolproof and it is not completely immune to having accidents, it is in most cases going to be a much safer option to perform most cuts. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about accuracy and repeatability. While a track saw can be incredibly accurate through the use of, say, parallel guides, there's still a margin for error because I'm the one that's placing that over and over and over again, and it's also something that theoretically could move if too much pressure is applied. As where a table saw, once I set that fence, it can give me repeatability over and over and over again unless I actually make adjustments to the measurements. So there might be instances where if you need repeatability over and over again, batching something out, a table saw may be a better option for you. Now, there are definitely a lot of other use cases where, a table saw may be better than a track saw, but that's just a general overview of kind of some of the things that I would probably be looking at between the two to make the best choice for whatever project I'm working on. Hopefully this was helpful and it'll help you on your next project.